Dangerous Torah today. We're going to be taking a look at uh, first and foremost, we're going to be taking a look at the Ark. And if you've ever watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know that it's a dangerous object. I wrote about the Ark this week in the Devar Torah that I'm the weekly Devar Torah I'm writing for Hadar, and I'm going to put that in the link here. Um, and I started there with a story or an image, and it's a very kind of classic, famous image. It's the image of the children of Israel marching through the desert. And here's what I wrote about. Let me give you, though, I'm going to give you the source sheet for today because there are two versions of this. And I started that Devar Torah with the one in the Mechilta, which is a midrash, an early midrash. But let's take a look at the other one just for the heck of it. This is a different forum, and this is maybe the more famous edition. So here is where we're going to start, and this is the famous image, and it's a beautiful image, and I think it's a celebrated image, and we can think a little bit about why that is. But here's the image. All those years, Kolatan Shanim Shayu Yisrael Bamidbar, that the Jewish people were in the wilderness, these two Aronot. Now, Aron is the word for ark, Aron, and this is the plural. So two arks, really, not to be confused with Noah's ark. Two arks. One, the casket of a dead person, and one, the ark of the covenant of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. Okay, this means the divine presence. These two arks were traveling together, and passersby would say, "What is the nature of these two arks?" And they said, "One is of a dead person, and one is of the divine presence." And the passersby, you get what's going on here? One is Joseph's coffin, because Joseph's coffin Moses took out of Egypt, and one is the ark, the ark of the covenant with the tablets of the Ten Commandments in them. And beautifully, they close by saying, "In what way is it the manner of a dead person to travel with the divine presence? That's crazy. What do you have a coffin next to your holiest object?" And they said in response, "This one fulfilled all that is written in this one." In other words, Joseph's bones are as holy as the tablets because Joseph's life was a living Torah, a living testament to the values in the Ten Commandments. Great, beautiful. What a sacred notion. Joseph's memory lives on, and his bones are holy because of the life he lived. But I used that image to make a point. First of all, a technical point, which is that there are only two uses of the term Aron in the whole Torah, and almost every one of those uses, there are about 40 instances of it being used to describe the ark with the tablets. But the first time the word is used, and the only other time it is used in the Torah, is in the last line of Genesis, when we read that what's the word? They what do you do when you preserve a body?
Embalmed.
Embalmed. Good, thank you. They embalmed Joseph's body, and placed him in an aron, a casket, or a sarcophagus in Egypt. So you can just see how there's one mention of an aron that is not the holy aron, and so that's the link that has these two arcs traveling together. But it also, and this is the point that I sort of made in the Devar Torah, but also want to kind of jump off from with you all today. That what that does is that that link imbues the ark with just a touch of death. That there are two arcs, and one contains life. In fact, in the other version, if you go and read that, the other version doesn't say the Shekhinah and a dead person. It says the ark of a dead person and the ark of the one who lives forever. So it's really like the ark of life and the ark of death. Okay? And there's something about the ark that, and I explored this a little bit, there's something about the ark that of course, we think of it as life-giving because it contains the tree of life, the Torah itself, or at least some record of our first encounter with Torah. But what does it mean to say that the ark contains death? Am I just being poetic? Well, no, I'm not. Because the ark, it turns out, is a very deadly object. And that's essentially the question that I want to explore with you all today, um, which is why. Why is the ark deadly? We almost take it for granted. Oh, you can't go anywhere near the ark. But once we start to really look at the stories of what happens, they're shocking and perplexing. And I have to say, I didn't find any really great answers. So I'm excited to explore the question with the group today. So let's say a blessing, and then we'll take a look at how the ark moves about in ancient Israel and the damage that it causes as it does. And together I want to think about why that is. Why does the ark function kind of like a third rail, where you better not touch it. Okay, let's say a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, I'm going to place that link in the source sheet again, and then we're going to head in. So, like I said, there are two versions of this story, but the story itself, where are we here? Okay, this is one version of the story right here. The Aron of Yosef would travel alongside the Aron of the one who lives forever. Okay, same conversation. The dead body lying in this Aron fulfilled what is lying on this Aron. And here's the one in, oh, I seem to have lost it. Hold on. The third rail. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, so this is the one we just saw. Very beautiful. Joseph fulfilled all that was written in that. And I suggested that this contact, just by association, lends the ark a feeling of life or death, life or death. Now, as I said, that's sort of a poetic thing to say, but look at what happens to the ark as it starts traveling around. Now, it's captured at one point by the Philistines and causes tremendous destruction. Let me just say that. It's captured by the Philistines. It's taken into Philistine territory and causes tremendous destruction. They place it at one point next to one of their idols, Dagon, and the idol is sort of like fallen over and dead the next day. But also everybody either dies or this is the translation for it, or gets hemorrhoids, right? So it's like really like of all the things. But it causes sickness and death wherever it goes because it's been captured by the enemy, presumably, right? That's the easy answer. The ark doesn't belong with the Philistines; it belongs with us. But it's not so simple. It's not so simple because take a look at what happens when the Philistines are done with the ark because it's causing so much death and destruction, and so they bring it back. They bring the ark back, but look at what happens when they try to bring it back. And here we're going to just look at a few examples of the ark sort of wrecking havoc and try to understand what exactly is going on here. So here's one example. They bring it back from the Philistines, and the cows went straight ahead along the road to Beit Shemesh. That's still a place that we can visit in Israel today, Beit Shemesh. They went along a single high road, lowing as they went, lowing like a cow lows, and meaning making noise, and turning off neither to the right or to the left. And the lords of the Philistines walked behind them as far as the border of Beit Shemesh. You can see the Philistines are freaked out, and they're just like, they just want to take it to the border and get rid of it. Okay. Now, the people of Beit Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley. Okay, just farmers in the field. And they looked up and saw the ark, and they rejoiced when they saw it. Now, that's good. V'yismechu lirot. They were happy to see it. So this seems like it's going to be a good encounter. The cart came into the field of Joshua of Beit Shemesh, and it stopped there. They split up the wood of the cart and presented the cows as burnt offering to the Eternal. It's like those poor cows didn't know what they were dragging the ark towards. A large stone was there, and the Levites took down the ark of the Eternal and the chest beside it containing the gold objects and placed them on a large stone. And then the men of Beit Shemesh presented burnt offerings and other sacrifices to the Eternal that day. Okay, they rejoiced when they saw the ark. They sacrificed offerings in celebration of God and God's ark having arrived. Seems like this is great news. The ark is back. And yet, the Eternal struck the men of Beit Shemesh because they looked into the ark of the Eternal. And they struck down 70 men among the people of struck down 70 men among the people, and sorry, that's not the correct 70 among and 50,000 men. So 50,000 and 70, and the people mourned, for God had inflicted a great slaughter upon the population. And the men of Beit Shemesh asked, "Who can stand in attendance on the Eternal, this holy God, and who will go up from us?" Okay, so you see my question here, and I went sifting through the commentaries. I didn't find great answers. I probably just missed the great answer, but a lot of the commentaries just sort of repeated, yes, it is because it's dangerous to touch the ark. It's very dangerous to look at the ark. It's very dangerous to go anywhere near the ark. I said touch because I'm already thinking about the next source. Let me give you one more before we start to process all together. This is the famous one. This is the famous instance of someone being sort of zapped by the ark. And I think most of us feel that it seems unfair. And that is when the ark is finally, it's sort of stored away in a remote village because it's causing too much destruction. And it stays there for many years until David becomes the king. And David decides that it's time to bring the ark back to Jerusalem. Right? It's time to bring the ark to Jerusalem, to his kingship. And I say back, but it had been in other places. But now it was time to bring the ark to Jerusalem and have it really be the center of the people. And they get the ark and they bring it back. But the ark starts to fall at one point remember, these are oxes kind of lugging it around. And thank goodness someone's there to save it. Okay, but it doesn't go well. So this is just another example. We'll look at a few more before we're done, but let's look at another example of the ark's power here. They loaded the ark of God onto a new cart and conveyed it from the house of Avinadav, which was on a hill. And Avinadav's sons Uzzah and Achio guided the new ark. Okay, so this guy was caretaking the ark, and then his two sons, who had some familiarity with it, they guided the cart as it headed out to take the ark back to Jerusalem. They conveyed it from Avinadav's house on the hill, Uzzah walking alongside the ark and Achio walking in front of the ark. And meanwhile, here's more of this joy. David and all of the house of Israel danced before the Eternal with the sound of all kinds of cypress wood instruments with lyres and harps and timbrels, sistrums and cymbals. But when they came to the threshing floor of Nachon, Uzzah reached out for the ark of God and grasped it, for the oxen had stumbled. Okay? Now, that seems like the holiest act of service you could possibly offer. The ark of God is about to fall on the ground, and you save it from falling? You're like, that's it. You're the hero of the Jewish people, right? Wrong. Instead, you know what's coming. God gets angry again. The Eternal was incensed at Uzzah, and God struck him down on the spot for his indiscretion, and he died there beside the ark of God. Now, okay. Now, we've arrived at our question, which I really only have one question. It's not even a very good question, but I have a feeling that this group can make a lot of this question, which is what's going on? Why is the ark so dangerous that even if you love the ark, even if you try to save the ark, even if you make offerings to the ark, even if you dance and celebrate and rejoice around the ark, some proximity, a proximity of like that can mean seeing or touching or just getting too close to the ark will destroy you. Now, why is that? Why is that? I mean, we take again, I sort of take it for granted. Oh, and I hear us talk this way. Oh, you can't see God because it's just overwhelming. But that thought sort of trails up. Why? Why would it be? Why would it be that the holy things, and we'll start to talk about God and the sanctuary and all the other things which we have to be very, very careful. We have a lot of like guardrails in this religion. All right. There were guardrails around Mount Sinai and there are guardrails around the Mishkan. There's lots of guardrails because if you get too close to the sacred things, it's danger. So why do you think that is? Okay. So this is like a very blunt question, but like I said, I have a feeling this group will know what to do with it. So let's turn. And I want to say I'm seeing some familiar hands, and I'm happy always to be in dialogue with my regular chevrutot here. But also, I hear sometimes from people coming to class like, oh, wow, I love coming to class. There's so many smart people there. I'm too intimidated to say anything. And it's like, we're not that smart. None of us are that. We're all just exploring here together. None of us are we're just exploring, and we need everybody's voice. So I really want to invite you, if you've never spoken before, to raise your hand and join in the conversation. And we're all none of us, me least of all, has the answers here. So I'm happy to take return callers, but I'm also excited to see folks that haven't spoken before. And I see Jeff Kahan, for example, who I haven't spoken to before.
Well, you have spoken to me before.
I've spoken to you in person, but not here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So a couple of things strike me about the story. One is that obviously it's serio-comedic, right? I mean, it's like a bad joke. But I wonder if it isn't something like Job, that there's an unfathomable logic or behavior or manner to the Almighty that humans can never really just get their heads around. And the other thing that struck me was the idea of the two coffins, that man needs God and God needs man, so that when they're separated, either one or both are misaligned, they're incomplete. So maybe that's part of it. Because when you say that the Philistines took the ark, first of all, it's kind of comedic. How are they going to know which ark? Because if you open it up, you die, right? So it's kind of like Schrodinger's box. But the other thing is, like, you didn't say what happened to the other ark. Maybe you need both of them together.
Right. Okay, good. So these are both really excellent places to begin. Though I think they're two very different places that Jeff offers us. One is just to say, yeah, we don't know why the ark annihilates people. That's sort of part of the point, is that it's the mysterium tremendum that is God. That's the point. It is overwhelming, and it's beyond what you can handle. And there's something, it's not about explaining why that is. It's just, there is a realm that is beyond our capacity to process, that's the nature of God. Yes, like the question is the answer. There's something about, that's what we are to understand. There's something about God and God's things. I mean, this is part of what I'm struggling with. It's not even God. It's not even the tablets. It's a box containing the tablets. But yes, even that will be, there's just something about the great beyond of knowledge of God that, like, yeah, it's dangerous. Who knows what's out there? Who knows what happens to you? Okay, so that's one direction to go down, is just the greatness of God and all of the question, like the mystery and the terror that implies. The other place that Jeff sort of pointed us towards is something having to do not just with the nature of God, but with the very particular fit of the ark to the people in the right place, at the right time, with the right person. We're going to see that theme come up a lot as well, that the ark has to be handled just right and has to be touched by just the right person, and has to be in exactly the right place. And even if it's celebrated and loved and even saved, if it's not the right person, that's still a problem. Okay. And here, um, uh, well, you know what? I'll stop there. Let's continue here from folks. Bob Hammer.
Well, this is not a philosophical answer, but a sort of a midrashic or metallurgical answer. There was gold on the inside and on the outside of the ark, and this was a capacitor that transmitted divine energy, and that's why it couldn't be touched. So
I love that. I love that. That's great.
somebody in the chat said it should have been going 88 miles an hour for the next effect, but I can't reply to that.
Good. I like that. That's like, it's Jeff's answer is very compelling. There's just some great mystery to God, but we're gonna try and figure it out, and Bob's trying to figure it out, and maybe it's actually some kind of spiritual metaphysics here. There's like the ark is a conductor for some kind of divine energy. And I mean, Bob was almost imagining it like it's like real electricity. And so there's like, there's actual conductors there. But yeah, on some level, something's flowing through like, it is like a third rail. And it's really just a question of like, not just coming into contact with God then, but coming into contact with a kind of direct channel of like intense God energy. That'll zap you. That'll zap you. Okay, I saw Matt Silberstein shaking his head. No, he didn't think that it was like a God electrocution. What do you think it is, Matt?
I've actually given a lot of thought to this. This is actually one of the things that interests
I'm not surprised. Somehow I'm not surprised.
We today see things like morality as I kind of want to say, they're up here. They're not direct physical things. They see this stuff as physical, as tangible, as real, that there is substance involved. It isn't just, well, God didn't like, though there's some of that, but this is the way. And I'm not saying, oh, well, it just happens to be dangerous. That's not my point. My point is that what for us is metaphysical, for them is physical. It is real. It is a thing. I'd heard the explanation. This is plutonium. It can do marvelous stuff. Put it in the right place and it's going to do, but treat it like plutonium. Treat it like we treat oxygen. It's all marvelous, wonderful stuff, but pure oxygen will kill you. So I think that's a big part of it. I don't think God sort of has a choice here. That is not God saying, I didn't like that. This is bad and hurts. This is bad and kills.
Okay, this is a really interesting answer that Matt is giving us because and it sounds I'm not surprised Matt's thought of this before, and it sounds like the kind of thinking that Matt does, and the kind of answer that Matt often gives about the ancient world, which is that he reminds us, and rightly, that they saw the world differently, and that their reality was different. Like, and the things that sometimes we try to spiritualize away, they took very, very seriously as real things. And Matt keeps using the word, it's physical. Now that in itself is a worthy point. But I also Matt was also putting it into contrast and conversation with an alternate position. So and I think that's powerful what Matt was doing there, which is to say, Matt sees the ark as having a potency of its own, or at least they thought so, as opposed to another theory, which is that the ark has no particular juice in and of itself. It is all about what God decides and says. And that's an important distinction, not just for analyzing this question of the ark's power, but also one that we can bring to all kinds of questions of ancient Jewish ritual, like keeping kosher. Or do we keep kosher because there are impure animals out there and there are pure animals, and we want to keep our bodies safe from the impurities? Or is it just because God said so? And like it's about following the arbitrary whims or secret designs or just like following the rules that God put into place. That's a very different conception of why you can be harmed by transgressing, because simply you have transgressed God's will, as opposed to what Matt is arguing for, which is no, it's plutonium. It's like God, and Matt said something very radical at the end, which is that God can't even help it. God would prefer you didn't die by touching the ark, but what are you going to do? It's that powerful. That's a very different conception, not just of the ark, but of all of the features, rituals, prescriptions, prohibitions that the Torah offers. Okay, so this is, yeah, great. Let's keep going. Robin Berkowitz.
So my question really is, okay, so what if we all agree the ark is powerful, it's mysterious, God wants it this way, and God only wants certain people to touch and handle in a certain way. So what would have happened if Aminadab's son hadn't tried to keep the ark on the cart? Then what? What would have happened? That's what I'm thinking about.
I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm so glad you asked that question because not because I know, but because, as I said, it's a great question that, like, what, the ark just fall to the ground? That's what God preferred? Is the ark to just fall to the ground, like disgracefully, maybe break the tablets inside? But I went around looking for answers, as I said, and didn't there probably are great answers that I just didn't discover. But of course, I always turn to Rashi, and Rashi gives what was it Jeff said? Serio-comic. There's something funny about this, even though it's deadly serious. Take a look at Rashi's answer here, and I want to show you how I get to it, just so that you can do the same if you are ever interested. So what you can do here with Safaria, we do this a lot, but let me just speak it out. Is here I am on the source that we were just looking at, where Uzzah is the one conveying the ark, and then he grabbed it, and then God struck him down. So I want to know what people say about it. So all I have to do is this heading, and then I click into it, and it'll take me to a separate page. And then when I click on the verse that I want, and what I want is the God getting, why did God get angry at Uzzah? So I click into this, and I'll go to the commentaries over here. And the first one I'll look at is Rashi. So anyway, that was all just a little bit of Safaria tutorial. But here's Rashi's answer. Why is God angry? Here it is in Hebrew. This is a strange word, his indiscretion. And so his shal. So Rashi is not sure exactly what that means. So he gives a definition, al hashgaga, for his mistake. And let's see what it says in English. Because of his mistake, he should have expounded a fortiori, meaning he should have known that even more so the ark causes danger, because the ark carried its own porters in the Yarden. When Bnei Israel crossed the Yarden, the Jordan, into the land of Israel. So isn't it all the more so that it should be able to carry itself here? Now, do you get what that is saying? In other words, the ark can carry itself. The ark carried itself across the Jordan River. Like, there's like a legend that the people didn't. How did the ark cross the Jordan? Were they lifting it above their heads? No, the ark carried itself. This is a very Rashi answer to take like a rabbinic legend and sort of use it as the explanation here. But the answer to Robin's question, and I doubt Robin is satisfied, is that Uzzah should have known that the ark can handle itself. The ark don't need you. Ark just fine on its own. So that's a wild way to say, oh, well, of course Uzzah had to die, because he should have known better than to presume that the ark needed a helping hand. Okay. So, you kind of get the like divine logic, like, oh, the ark can do anything, but it doesn't actually make sense. Okay. So, all right. I'm seeing Allison has a thought.
I do have a thought, and it's kind of, you're going to laugh at me. And for everyone else who doesn't know me, this is kind of a radical thought, but I think it kind of fits with what we were talking about. So I learned a couple years ago from one of my teachers, David Sachs, who is with Happy Minyan, this idea that the Mishkan is like a mirror for our bodies. So like that we build the Mishkan in reciprocity with God for our bodies, and that the Mishkan becomes like a body for God, like a place where God can come and dwell, and that in reciprocity, God builds our bodies, and the Holy Divine Spirit also dwells within us. So when we talk about the part of God that, like the essence of God that comes down and dwells, we talk about the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, like the feminine aspects of God. And when we talk about the Holy of Holies, imagining that the Mishkan was like a body for God, that the Holy of Holies would be like her pussy. I think maybe there's something about this that is about sex, because the Aron is like the center of life and death, and it's through sex that that nexus between life and death occurs within a woman's body. Like it's within like that place of mystery that sometimes a life is born and sometimes death occurs. And it's mysterious. And we know from our Torah that that question of life and death, that is the purview of God. And I think it's a compelling, although strange, but compelling idea for a couple of reasons. The first is that, you, Rabbi, you were talking about how the Mishkan has to be touched like by the right people in the right way at the right time. And I think so much like our most like intimate, our most private parts like have to be touched like in the right way by the right people at the right time. And if they're touched not at the right time, not by the right person, that can kill you, because like we know how destructive also sex can be. Um, and dangerous. And I think the reason why I was kind of like raising my hand just now is because we were talking like, well, what would have happened if like no one had stepped in to grab the Mishkan, like when it seemed that the Mishkan was going to fall? And you brought up Rashi's answer. Well, like, why would you assume that the Mishkan can't take care of herself? And I just thought, wow, that's so interesting. Like, as a woman in my life, like, how many times has like some man tried to just like intervene and be like, oh no, I'm gonna do it. And I'm like, stop it. Like, why would you assume that I'm not like good on my own? Um, so anyway, Dubarty. You're muted, Rabbi.
That is just fascinating. I don't know, I must say I don't know exactly what to do with that, except that it's I'm gonna leave that Torah there, because I'm not sure where exactly to go with it. But I will say that it is compelling. It is compelling in the sense that sexual knowledge is like one of the first things that human beings get. They get it through transgression. They get it through touching something that they're not supposed to touch. So does that sort of Edenic violation sort of set the stage for other kinds of knowledge? The word for sexual intimacy is knowledge, and the word for divine intimacy is knowledge. So like maybe there's something there, but mostly you made the case. I certainly won't build on it any more eloquently than you did. I will just say that whether or not the symbolism can be mapped on directly, the implications are certainly there. All of the implications, which that you were suggesting, which is that this is maybe we learn from the Ark and from prohibitions in general, but certainly from having a prohibition that is this visceral, physical, and dangerous. Like, do not touch this. Maybe we learn not to touch things, like maybe we learn about boundaries, and that, even when we want intimacy and we want knowledge of something, that like there are clear boundary lines. So I don't want to riff on this because you laid it out so beautifully, but I think that there's a lot there to continue to explore. So I'll leave that there for now. Okay. Let's see. Circling back around here. Let's hear from Yonatan.
We were never supposed to have a Mishkan. We were never supposed to have an Aron Kodesh. These came about because of the sin of the golden calf. We needed, pardon my dog howling, we needed a place where we could wrap our minds around the physical manifestation of God. And that's because of our limitations, not because of God's limitations. God commanded us to build the Mishkan. God commanded us to build an Ark of the Covenant. God did not command us to protect the Ark of the Covenant. I think part of the wisdom of the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be learning when to let it go. And that it's okay if the Philistines take it, and it's okay if it falls and it breaks, because God doesn't really live in the Ark of the Covenant. And it's the failure to recognize this that's the great danger. The Ark is supposed to retrain our minds and retrain our eyes. Traditionally, we say that there were three things inside the Ark, right? The stone tablets that had the 10 utterances, and also the Torah scroll that Moses wrote, were all in this Ark. And for the last 2 years, I've been working a lot with Torah scrolls and with the associated materials. One of the pieces of my mind and my eyes that I've had to retrain is this understanding that there's only one material that's considered worthy, fit to hold the words of the living God in a Torah scroll. And that is the skin of a dead animal, a kosher dead animal. And it's supposed to be processed, although people take shortcuts today, it's supposed to be processed in urine, in feces, in rotten dough, and in gallnuts, which are basically an infection of an oak tree, like every waste product imaginable. And that's what's fit to hold the word of the living God, is dead things processed in waste products. So I think it's supposed to teach us that there's holiness everywhere, where you least expect it, really. We don't have the Torah scroll that Moses wrote. We don't have it in a physical sense anymore. We have the Torah. And I think everyone here can understand that our Judaism would be diminished if the temple were rebuilt. If we found the Ark of the Covenant, if we brought it back into the temple, if we started offering sacrifices, that is, in a sense, the ideal in our tradition. But it's also an ideal in the sense that we need to learn to let it go.
Okay. All right. This is very cool because Yonatan also, I think, takes a very radical position in some ways, or at least a position with radical implications, but it's exactly the opposite of Matt's. Matt was saying that the ancient world perceived these objects as so real and full of real potency, that that even God could not control the power of the ark. That was simply the way it was. That's like the ark has its own power. And the radical thing about that is that God is almost like beholden to the rules of the ark. But what Yonatan says is almost the exact opposite, which is that the ark is a concession. All the physicality of the Mishkan and the ark and the high priest, these are all concessions to our need for physicality, but actually physical things do not contain the power of God. And on some, we're allowed to have them, but on some level, we also have to learn to let them go. And so this is sort of the opposite position. It's almost like the ark doesn't really matter. Yonatan went so far as to say that the ark could fall to the ground. Who cares? It's just an ark. The point is that, you have to come to realize that God is the essential force here. And yeah, the ark will remind me of God, or it'll contain a record of my conversation with God, but it's God that I really am supposed to be connecting to, and I actually am supposed to have some distance from the ark, to not be so obsessed with the ark. And the mechanisms for keeping people away from the ark, I'm sort of presuming from what Yonatan said, are in some ways like they're there to say, like, don't become too obsessed with this thing, with this object. God is much bigger than that, but also God is not physical. Isn't that like the ultimate message here in this religion? Okay. I am just gonna put out a few more or a couple more sources, because I not just to get through my sources, but because I want to expand the conversation a little bit from just thinking about the ark to thinking about the Mishkan in general, the sanctuary in general, and to remind us that it isn't just the ark that causes danger in this religion. So here is the classic formulation of not being allowed to go near the ark in the Torah. This is in the book of Numbers, and we're speaking to Aaron and his sons. And the Torah says, "You shall keep watch over the sanctuary, HaKodesh, and the altar, HaMizbeach, that wrath may not strike again the Israelites." When did wrath strike before? Well, lots of times. But one place where I'm this is on the heels of like another plague in the desert. But it reminds us that here, let me finish the passage actually before the language here is, "While you and your son shall be careful to perform your priestly duties in everything pertaining to the altar and what is behind the curtain, I make your priesthood a service of dedication. Any outsider who encroaches shall be put to death." Hazara karev yumat. This phrase right here, Hazara karev yumat. Anyone who is not a priest will die. So it isn't just the ark and touching the ark. The whole sanctuary, like now I just want to remind us of how big an institution of cautionaries we have. The whole sanctuary is to be run by one family, one tribe, one group of people. And everybody else can't go too close or they will die. Everybody else. That's not just the ark, it's the sanctuary, right? And then, just to go all the way, let's also not forget the original thing that could kill you, which is God itself, right? This is what God says to Moshe, "Vayomer lo tuchal lirot et panai, ki lo yireni adam v'chai." You can't see my face, whatever that means, because a person cannot see me and live. Okay, so you can't come too close to God. You can't come too close to the sanctuary. You can't come too close to the ark. It's like the whole thing. God itself is dangerous. God itself is like, you can't see it. It's not just that you can't see it because it's abstract and beyond your. It's like it will kill you. And again, I just sort of in this moment want to return to the question that I started with, but now not just asking about the ark, but asking about all of this. God, why do we conceive of God? Why does the Torah conceive of God as a force that is dangerous, that will annihilate you? God, isn't God the ultimate good? Isn't God the thing that we're striving? The Hasidim speak of dveikut, of clinging to God. But it sounds like here, you can't cling to God. You'll be nothing but smoke and ashes in an instant. Okay, so I asked the question that I asked at the outset. Why is God so dangerous? Why do we think of God as so dangerous? Okay, let's hear from Emily.
When we were talking about the story of Uzzah being killed for grabbing the ark, I thought of something I believe, which is that there's very few accidents in the world, only accidents waiting to happen. And so you could interpret this from a community point of view, that they didn't secure the ark on the cart properly, or they didn't pick the best oxen to pull it, or whatever preparations could have been made such that it would never slip. And so Uzzah, he his is a sacrificial death, but it's really about the community is not taking care of what needs to be done to keep everyone safe. And you could say the same thing in the part you just showed us, that this Judaism is very communal. Individuals die to punish the whole community. And it's not really about an individual can't see God's face, or they'll die. It's really about, okay, I'm going to put this whole tribe of people in place to protect you all. It's all about the whole and the tribes and the community. And individuals suffer if the community does not, ultimately live properly or live by the laws or take good care to be sure things are safe or are done properly.
Yeah, that's a very helpful comment that Emily is giving us, because I always think of the Uzzah moment as a question about what that guy did and why is he being punished. But Emily reframes it for us in a way that's very intuitive to me, which is that, when things like that happen in our world, we say, oh my gosh, someone died tragically in some kind of work accident, or something fell on, like something's wrong with the whole system. Their safety precautions have not been followed. And why don't we look at it this way? They were too cavalier. They were just shoving, they were just dancing around. Maybe even that beautiful rejoicing was not the protocol, was too loose. So it isn't just Uzzah. Uzzah reached out, but he was just the person suffering the blow of the chaos that ensues when you treat something like the ark like something you can just sling on the back of an ox cart. No, I don't know. I don't know what the precautions would be and how else they might have transferred it. And Rashi thinks that the ark would have just been fine on its own. But I think Emily's point is a very strong one, that what we're learning here is not you should not touch the ark, but that we as a community should be careful about the power that we hold, because otherwise someone's going to get zapped. And I'll just mention another person, or a couple of people that got zapped. And those are Aaron's sons. I'm sure some of you have thought during this conversation about Aaron's sons. Here, I'm gonna give it over to Richard, who nods his head. But Richard, what were you thinking? Can't hear you, Richard. Can't hear you. You're muted.
I was thinking of Nadav and Avihu, and the last passage you quoted had the word zar, and there was the Eish Zara that finished them off. And when you look at the midrash surrounding Nadav and Avihu, you don't get very satisfying answers. You get the full spectrum. They were either too passionate, wanting to be close to God, or they were drunk, or they wanted to overthrow the elder generation. And I think the very confoundingness of this, if I can use that word, is part of the, like, let's add to the mystery. And if there's a little collateral damage that adds to the mystery, so be it. Because the poor guy who tried to save the ark from touching the ground because of the ox stumbled, that's completely counterintuitive and makes no sense. So I don't know that this is particularly theologically satisfying, but if you're trying to create this potent symbol of, the thing that's on the cusp of life and death and everything else, having a couple of people die from touching it with no really great reason for it that people can debate for all time why it was, is sort of a good way to pull it off. It doesn't map onto the kind of God I believe in, and that's where I'm troubled with it.
Good. Okay, so Richard does some very, very excellent textual work for us, which is just we mentioned that Aaron's sons died because they not touched the ark, but made some offering that would, and they're priests, right? But during the inauguration of the Mishkan, they died. And Richard reminds us that this language here that I emphasized, any outsider who encroaches shall be put to death. The word there is zar, hazar. And if we go to the scene where Aaron's sons die, they famously die because they brought an eish zara, a strange fire, right? Mm-hmm. So that language of kind of foreignness, there's some you can become the foreign element that sets off a kind of toxic chemical reaction. So that's important to just note, and builds on the theory of the ark as a kind of as a delicate object that can only be handled in the right ways by the right people at the right time. But Richard also offers and then is uncomfortable, understandably, with the notion that maybe, some people are being made an example of here. That there's a kind of, yeah, this is what happens, and you should know. Even Aaron's sons, if they're in the right place at the right time, everybody should know. You just can't do this, and if some people have to get zapped to prove the point, then that's the way it is. But that's an uncomfortable kind of. I mean, when we say that when Richard says like I'm not sure about that God. I mean, in some ways, that's the question I've been asking all along. Why should God be dangerous? Why should God be scary? Like I want to maybe not like a nice like huggable God, but like a God that is always going to be good to come in contact with, a God that's always going to give me like nourishment and light and love. So, like on the one hand, it's very easy to speak of God with the adjectives of terror and grandeur. On the other hand, there's something about that feels like, I don't know. It's sort of disappointing, isn't it? That God is not just a loving, caretaking force, but actually is something that sometimes you got to stay away from. Okay. Noah Pollock.
I've been thinking this whole time that we've been concerned with the art that brings life and the art that brings death. But then I thought, death in what regard? Is it their physical death, their spiritual death, or a death that's completely separating them from the community to a different plane or a different area that right now we can't get in contact with them to see what that death was like, but are they actually dead to us in the real sense because we still have the memories and teachings of them then, but we can't talk to them anymore. So make of that what you will.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I'll make of it whatever. Now, so yeah, I think I was thinking along those lines also, Noah, when I was writing about this. This class has been an opportunity to explore the question of just the explosive, deadly element in the arc. But initially, I was thinking more along the lines you just articulated, Noah, which is that there's something about the arc that is associated with death because death and life are sort of the primal kind of forces that govern our existence. And this is just the human cycle, and all things die and live, and that there's something sacred about death as well, right? That dead bodies are sacred to us, even though they're lifeless. And broken tablets. There's a legend that says that broken tablets, as well as the whole tablets, because Moshe broke the first two, were in the ark. Like the things which are broken and the vestiges of what once was, these things are holy as well. So I think there's good kind of poetic work to be done there to think about the kind of the meaning. We're asking it almost like a technical question, like why does the ark kill? But what is the meaning of an ark that is associated with death that might have traveled alongside a casket? That too is worth contemplating. Let's hear from Diana.
Hi, I didn't expect to come up so quickly.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to just work more voices in. So if you haven't, like, just so you know, if you haven't spoken in this class before, just raise your hand and you'll go right to the front of the line.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate a moment of time. So I really have two thoughts. One thought is about the time frame that we're talking about too. So potentially the shift to understand that that God is the powerful entity and energy that he is. It's important maybe at the time frame that we're talking about, so that the Israelite people understood that this is where the source and the power is, and it comes through and is handled appropriately, hierarchically, by a family, by the Kohanim, by the Levites, and this was the appropriate channel that was authorized at the time to handle the ark, and within the Mishkan and all of that, those proper procedures, and that needed to be respected above all things. So I think that there is an element of that is why that it was a deadly circumstance to deviate from that, and that needed to be enforced at all times. And so I think that might be why that this was a deadly situation, if there was a deviation from that law or those circumstances. And then the other thing that occurs to me is that also maybe during this time in human history, this kind of force was necessary to be understood, appreciated, and needed to be respected at this time in human history. We may not have the need of a God necessarily for those purposes now, that might be so scary and dangerous because times have changed potentially. But at that time, that kind of force may have been useful to maybe get the point across, or to establish a faith or religious belief system in a different way. So times are different. Times have changed. And so maybe there's something
We're not
to be
getting zapped by arcs anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe that's why the ark is gone. There's probably reasons why a conduit or channel like that is no longer with us. And that may be by design as well.
Well, thank you so much for those comments, Diana. I appreciate them, and they fit so nicely with Yonatan's points from earlier, I think. Because Yonatan was making a very strong case that really the ark was never meant to be the essential thing and was just a concession. And Diana, in some ways, it takes that theory, but also considers the value of that concession, and maybe considers maybe a period in which the people need a physical object in order to be able to negotiate the relationship with God, which it's so mysterious, which perhaps contains all kinds of dangers, serious dangers. But how do you learn those dangers when interacting with a force that you cannot understand or see or really ever come into contact with? Well, maybe you learn about the life and death, highs and lows, safety and danger relationship with God by using this object, this box, this ark, as a kind of a proxy for a relationship that is fraught with all kinds of danger itself, but is also so difficult to even begin to understand. Maybe the ark is teaching us some of those lessons, and bringing us to a place where Diana suggests maybe this was the plan all along, is to get past the ark and to have enough of an understanding of the wonder, but also the danger of a relationship with God, that now we can just do that on our own without this intermediary. So, okay, great work today, everybody. Really appreciate this all these different perspectives on this question that has bothered me for a long time. So I'm grateful for your Torah today. I will see you next week. Bye, all.